Hey guys, it's Sam from Nonfiction Horror. Today's video is going to be a collab video that I am doing with the Lawn Gnome over on his channel. So he has a series called 10 for 12. Every month he picks a topic and then chooses fellow YouTubers to pick their top 10 favorites of the selected theme. So the theme for October was favorite monsters. So our challenge was to pick our top 10 favorite monsters, and then he's gonna make a playlist with everybody who's participating and then put them in a little playlist, and that way you guys can watch them and maybe find out some new YouTubers here on YouTube. So the rules were pretty simple. Just pick your top 10 of any kind of monster. It didn't have to be super traditional monsters like the Blob or the Wolfman or stuff like that nature. So kind of our own interpretation of monsters. So I'm gonna actually go from my favorite to my least favorite, or maybe ones that aren't really necessarily scary or traditional, I should say, monsters, but to me, they fit the category. So the very first monster, the first thing that popped into my mind when I heard about this challenge was the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth. So if you're not familiar with that movie, it's about this little girl and she kind of goes in this own little distant world and there's creatures and just, it's like a really beautiful movie. You may know him as the guy who has the eyes on his hands and he uses them to see. Not only was that scene for me, I remember watching it when I was a little bit younger, maybe I guess a teenager at that time. That scene was just really fascinating, the artwork involved in it and just the monster on its own. That not only was really creepy and such an original idea at the same time. I mean, I would never in a million years think that he would have to see with his hands. And I just remember the moment when he put them up, and that was just kind of like an aha moment for me, like, this is really cool, this is great artwork, this is a great character. And so I identify him as one of my favorite monsters just because of the way he kind of looks. The second monster that I have here is by far probably the most fearful character on here for me. His name is the Pyramid Head. He is from the Silent Hill series. Not only have I played the video games, which are really scary and like one of the only games to ever give me nightmares, the movie as well is really scary, and just it's about a mom who loses her daughter and she goes to Silent Hill. It's a small town, and it's just like one of those, there's like zombie nurses, there's just different types of creepy creatures that are involved in Silent Hill. But this one specifically really scared me, not only because it's a super gory character where he could just kind of kill you with one slice with his arm, which is like this huge machete type knife. That was really weird. It's just also the fact that his head, like he didn't have a defined eyes, there wasn't a defined mouth, and his head is really long in the shape of a pyramid with a very pointy edge. You really just know that once you see him, you are literally dead. You're gonna die. He's after you. There's no way around it. He's just a brutal character. And so for me, I classify him as my second favorite slash second scariest monster. Number 3, we have Jigsaw. So I understand that the clown isn't scary. If you were to see this clown, for me, it really wouldn't spark fear. I really wouldn't be afraid of him. If I saw him running around, I'd be like, this little clown on a bicycle is not scary. But what he encompasses to me is that clown, once you see it, you know you're gonna get a video that's gonna say, I'd like to play a game with you. Number 4 is Nosferatu. So I watched this movie, I think, last year, and for the longest time I had no idea what Nosferatu is. And if you aren't familiar with who he's essentially the original Dracula. I believe that was the first adaptation ever made onto film. And so if you haven't seen the movie, you can actually watch it here on YouTube. I do believe that there is an orchestra in the background, even though it is a silent film. I don't know if that was added on later on or if that's how they originally made it. But it wasn't until I watched it where I was actually kind of creeped out by him. And I think the movie helps with that because it was one of those first films ever made. I don't even know what year it came out, but it was done on film. So there's moments where it can get really patchy, or like a blob of black pops up, it gets a little bit staticky. Sometimes the cut editing scenes are a little bit off. So the movie itself, I believe, is like an original home video kind of feel to it, and those kind of things freak me out, where it feels like it was a lost video. Stuff of that nature kind of creeps me out. Number 5. Okay, so number 5, this was something that I had thought of, like one of the first things that popped into my mind, but there were other ones that kind of took precedent. But I'm going to say for number 5, as a collective whole, orcs. For me, the orcs were so scary. I just absolutely hate them, and they're just kind of like little scary demon trolls that roam around and kill you. And so I actually have a fun question for you guys. I was thinking about this because I feel maybe somebody else, or maybe it's just me, my interpretation, but you know how there's always battles of the books or comparison between the books? Well, what do you think is a scarier monster? Do you think orcs are scarier, or do you think Dementors from the Harry Potter series are more scary? I think Dementors are scary in their own right, but there's something about orcs. I feel like because they're more of a tangible thing, I guess, because they walk around and they don't fly around, that they're scarier to me, and their faces you can actually see. But what would you say would be scarier, orcs or Dementors? Number 6 is maybe a lesser known character. His name is Dr. Satan. He was in the movie A House of a Thousand Corpses by Rob Zombie. Probably one of my top 10, top 5 favorite Halloween films to watch, or just kind of scary films to watch in general. It's a really campy film, but it is quite scary, and it does have a lot of that. I think it's like one of those, it's very reminiscent to me of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, modern day, with a slight kind of funny twist. But anyways, Dr. Satan has a very small part in this movie, but it did scare me nonetheless, and I considered him to be a monster in my eyes. Basically, there's this one scene where all of the young people are leaving the main house where they've kind of been trapped for the past few days. She runs out into the field, and she ends up seeing this like little abandoned, it starts to look kind of like this abandoned house, barn, but once you go in, you kind of go down underground, and that's where Dr. Satan lives. And there's one point where he's all trapped to this like gadget, which, and the whole contraption itself is kind of intricate and really scary in its own right. But he breaks loose, and then he chases her underground in kind of like this maze tunnel. I don't remember if he kills her. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he did. I highly recommend you guys check out that movie this Halloween. It's a little bit kind of gory, I would say, but it is a little bit different if you guys want just to have a chill Saturday night. I think that one's cool. Like, you know, not a lot of people have seen it, so check that one out. Number 7. So I also thought of this character, one of the first things that popped into my head, but he's not for me one of the scariest, and that would be the Babadook. So if you haven't seen this movie, I recommend you check it out. I believe it's on Netflix. It's been on there for about a year or so now. And so even though the Babadook you don't really get to see too often, it's usually just the shadowy figure of him. And so you kind of have to come up with the idea of what you think he looks like. They do show him in the actual storybook that they do read. And he did seem like a creepy type Slenderman character. So he would be, I think, more classically known as like the boogeyman that hides in your closet, or the boogeyman that hides in your bed. And so for me, that's why I picked him as the number 7 monster on my list. Number 8, this one is, I guess, more of a classic monster, and it is the guy from the Phantom of the Opera. So I remember when I was a lot younger, I don't know how or why or who I was with necessarily, but I remember that I was watching the Phantom of the Opera with my mom at the time, and I remember being really scared of him. I thought his face was so weird. I had been really young, like maybe less than 12, less than 13, and I thought he looked really scary. And once again, with the whole classic film, just the movie in itself was a little bit old and dated, so it was just a little bit, the quality of it wasn't that good, but also kind of scary because I believe it was a black and white film. So he really creeps me out with those big old eyes and just that big old mouth. He really kind of freaked me out when I was a lot younger. My number 9 choice is the skeleton from Tales of the Crypt. I remember watching this when I was little, and at first it really creeped me out, but then I grew to love the introduction where it kind of goes to the castle and it goes all the way around until the very last scene where he pops out of the casket and does that funny face and he starts laughing. That was really creepy at the time though. You know when you're young, something freaks you out, it's really scary, but you can't look away and you're intrigued and you're so just curious about it. That for me was the skeleton. Now that I'm older looking back, I can appreciate that he was kind of funny, and it was kind of like a campy, you know, B-grade show that I believe was on HBO at the time, but I really enjoyed it. I thought he was really cool. Number 10 pick for one of my favorite monsters is the guy, his name is Bagul from Sinister. So I remember there's one scene where he's underwater in a pool and you just see his face, and I really just thought that was kind of creepy, and that kind of freaked me out a little bit. This is, I would say, more of an honorable mention than an actual favorite, I should say. I put him on there because I do remember being really scared when I saw that movie of that one scene that kind of freaked me out, and it still kind of plays in my head every now and then. I'm like, ew, that weird creepy clown looking guy underwater. But then at the same time, if you're familiar with the band Slipknot, He's pretty much just a dropout member of the band Slipknot because they all have like their masks and stuff like that. So it's not like it's a creepy monster, like I said, more of a traditional sense. But he's one of those from those films that I was like, yeah, he was a pretty creepy dude. So I hope you guys enjoyed my top 10 list. Like I said, it was not necessarily traditional, but these are what I would consider to either be villains that looked like monsters or they kind of were monster-esque. I would really, really sincerely like to thank the Lawn Gnome for reaching out to me and asking me to participate for the 10 for 12 series. I think it's a really cool idea, a good way for all of us YouTubers to kind of come together, find new people, and then kind of have to make us do a little homework and a little bit of thinking and kind of think what kind of movies and monsters and all this kind of stuff. And there's a whole bunch of different series that he has, whether it's books or movies or songs or bands or just a whole bunch of stuff. So go check out his channel. And once again, thank you guys for watching. Happy Halloween. Bye.